Okay, so we weren't even live with the microphone. Welcome to Lady Lexi's Lair. This is not our Twitch show on Lady Lexi Live. This show's brought to you by Transgirl Media, and we're going to discuss different news articles here. It's going to be a little different than our Twitch show. As you can see, the setup is different, and I get to stare at my beautiful wife for this entire time. I am your hostess, Lady Lexi, and of course, to my right is my beautiful wife, Crystal.
Hey.
So anyway, we have a news article today that we posted in the chat, and we're going to read some of the article today. So it says, in my time as a writer for Outsports, I've seen and written firsthand on how courageous and contagious. I've also reported how unfounded fears, hysteria, and bigotry can spread as well. Of course, we all know from listening to me on my Twitch show that bigotry and hatred and fear-mongering and all that types of stuff is very, very normal. Well, wait until we go over this article and you can't believe the unbelievable things we're going to talk about. It was the final of the World Professional Billiards and Snooker Association Women's U.S. Snooker August 28th in Seattle. Britain's Jamie Hunter defeated fellow Brit Rebecca Kenna 4-1. The 25-year-old also won the World Billiards Championship the week before. Normally, an up-and-comer on a hot streak is celebrated. However, Hunter, being an up-and-comer who was also, you know it, a trans woman, faced criticism mixed with cheers. A statement from the gender-critical anti-trans organization GenSpec said Hunter's victory was because trans women have an advantage over women as they have better reach due to their longer limbs and better spatial ability due to testosterone. The last 3 weeks or so has seen the murky discourse that the last 3 years sink to extreme depths. As the nation's school children head back to the classrooms, we received news from Utah that a girl who has won state-level competition this past spring was also the target of official investigation. And we're going to get to that very, very shortly. So Crystal and I, before the show started, we decided that we're going to measure our arm lengths. And would you know it that our arm length is exactly the same from tip to finger, finger to shoulder. Her arms are no bigger, no smaller, and I can't possibly see how there is a longer reach due to longer limbs. And I'm not really sure how testosterone can affect my playing of billiards. Can you?
No, I don't get it. But one thing that is clear, they need to separate the pool players by arm length. That's the only fair way. They have to separate them by arm length because,
Arm length.
Yes.
Shall we separate them by nanomoles and pictograms of testosterone and estrogen too?
Oh, I'm really not sure that's going to help the guys win.
I would like to know from all the viewers out there, if there are any viewers out there, what testosterone has to do with playing pool. Because last I checked, when you go out, most people who play pool or snooker or nine ball or any of that stuff really hang out around a table and drink pool. Drink pool and beer, I guess, apparently. But I can't think of any advantage to anything other than I might be an inch taller than you to where maybe that might help with my reach. But I don't see how that's possible. What do you got to say?
Yeah, no, I think I've already said all there is to say about it. I mean, obviously, we want to make this a fair sport, so we need to line everybody up and measure their arms.
Which part should we go by? Shoulder to fingertip?
Oh, sure.
Should we just
Shoulder
do
to
elbow
fingertip.
wrist? We shouldn't do elbow to shoulder.
Oh, no.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. The whole thing.
So as you can see, she thinks you should measure by arm length, and that's how we're going to separate everybody by arm length. I am here to tell you that Crystal and I did in fact measure our arms, and I'm telling you they are the same length. I can't think of any advantage testosterone would even bring to the pool billiards. Not too long ago, there was a 29-year-old transgender skateboarder. I don't remember if you remember reading this article with me on Twitch, but there was a 29-year-old skateboarder who won the competition against a 15-year-old. And the 15-year-old said, well, she won because she had a physical advantage. But I can't understand how testosterone or any physical advantage could be used in a kick flip or an
It's
ollie or even up in a ramp just skateboarding.
Would it be fair to say that the only time that it would even make a difference would be in a contact sport if you were to pretend there was any difference?
Well, it's interesting you say that because there is actually no scientific evidence that there is any advantage, biological, height, weight, testosterone, bones, whatever. Because remember, we've done researches where we know that testosterone has been linked to strength, but only after a long course of time. And so when you're using testosterone, if you were to inject somebody with testosterone right away, it wouldn't have any ill effects or any performance or anything like that. It's not like I shoot my estrogen and I start crying today. I mean, it takes time to take effect. And if I were to take testosterone, it's not like I would be instantly strong and I could go outside and start picking up 50-foot logs and just moving them along instantly. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, no, I can no longer picture you carrying logs.
Well, the point of the conversation is if I shot myself up with testosterone, by that theory, I should be able to go outside, swing a chainsaw with one hand and pick up logs in the other because I have all this testosterone suddenly injected into my body, and now I should just be super strong over it.
Is it testosterone or PCP?
I'm not entirely sure, but according to
I
them,
just
it's
had to
advantage of
ask.
testosterone. Isn't that interesting?
I'm just not sure that's how it works.
So I'll leave it up to you, ladies and gentlemen, and you can decide whether or not you think that there's a biological advantage in the game of pool or skateboarding or just in sports in general, because I can tell you that there isn't one. Uh, I would challenge you to show me any evidence otherwise, and I guess we can go from there. But there's more to this article, and we're gonna continue to read it. As I said earlier, there is a backlash in Utah in girls' sports because you know that Utah passed a law. And so I'm going to read this. And as the nation's school children head back to the classroom, because we all know the kids started going back to school, we've received many news from the Utah that a girl who has won a state level competition this past spring was the target of an official investigation initiated by the complaints of Karens. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant parents of the girls who finished second and third. The investigation was prompted by a mandate of law banning transgender girls from participating in girls' sports, which happened to have passed back in March and went into effect in July of this year. Utah High School Activities Association legislative representative David Spatafor told the Deseret News on August 17th that his office had received a number of complaints about the winner, with some of those complaints saying that she didn't look feminine enough. That being said, the UHSAA by law had to search through all of her enrollment records all the way back from high school, stretching back to kindergarten, just to determine that the student athlete was cisgender. And so that law itself is just another variant of the Alliance Defending Freedom built cut and paste bans that have so far been enacted in 9 other states against trans athletes this year, just children. Some of those laws calling for chromosomal testing, an invasive, archaic visual genital inspection of students. International sports governing bodies stopped practicing this way back in 1990. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think that's a terrible role model for a young girl
Well, it certainly sounds like me
to pander to, all of the nonsense about, oh, you can't beat a boy. So I think the whole thing is ridiculous.
Well, how do you feel about somebody saying you're not feminine enough? Because we know that that's starting to spread, and
Oh, is it ever?
it is, and it's spreading, and it's leaking into bathrooms. It's leaking into you don't look feminine enough, and so people are now starting to accuse others of being transgender, despite the fact that they're cisgender, because they don't all look like you. What do you say about that? Like, it's unbelievable. And furthermore, what do you have to say about kids' genitals being checked? When did the schools become pedophiles?
Well, I think that we all know that anywhere where there are children, the adults that tend to conglomerate, there's a good likelihood that they're pedophiles. So
It sounds that way. We
Yeah.
know that we know that of most pedophiles found, it happens to be cis males, and I'd be willing to bet you that most of the principals and people in these schools happen to just be males who must love a law like this where they have to check children's genitals.
Well, for the people that aren't pedophiles, I'm sure that a law like this scares the shit out of them.
Mm-hmm.
And for the ones that are pedophiles, that's why they got into the field.
And how do you feel about going all the way back? Now, this girl's in high school, apparently. And as I said, they said that she didn't, quote, look feminine enough. In other words, she didn't look like you. And so that being said, how do you feel about them going from high school all the way back to kindergarten just to make sure that she was a cisgendered female from day one of her school career? Sounds a little invasive.
Well,
to me.
those are the only records that they had available to them, that they had access to. I don't think it would have been legal for them to obtain any other records without requesting and having her parents sign. So I think it was pretty cowardly, quite honestly, that they went through all that trouble.
What about the parents? The parents coming in second and third place. When did we become a nation of, oh my God, I lost, and so we need to challenge everybody? When did that happen?
I think that at this point, it's just a matter of participation trophy culture
So
at
you
this
think-
point. I think that the parents were upset because they wanted their children to have the trophy. They didn't get it. So they threw a temper tantrum.
Well, isn't there second and third place trophies for some of these sports? I mean, this was
Yes,
whatever
but they
it was.
clearly wanted first. So, and I feel sorry for the children of these parents. I really do, because nothing they ever do is going to be good enough.
What about the not looking feminine enough thing? I mean, what's going on with that? Because we all know that that's bleeding into bathrooms. There's, I know you and I have talked about there are cisgendered women trying to throw other cisgendered women out of the bathroom simply because they don't, quote, appear feminine enough. And I want to know who makes the rules of this. What is feminine enough? Like, what is feminine enough? Seriously, what does that consist of?
Well,
Do we have to look like you?
feminine enough is when a Karen has less femininity than anybody else in the room. It's really as simple as that. So if her femininity is threatened by another cis woman, of course she's going to accuse her of being trans. And she's definitely threatened by trans women because they are extremely feminine. And that's hard for a lot of TERFs to handle.
Can you elaborate on that?
Because a trans woman has been cheated out of so much through childhood, adolescence, and young adulthood that when they are finally able to be themselves, they jump in with both feet. They really enjoy femininity to the extremes because they finally get to be feminine. They finally get to be themselves. So they do, kind of bask in it and enjoy it. You certainly do.
I do, yes. I actually enjoy
Yes.
being myself, and it's very rare that I do go out without makeup or wearing, my best or looking my best. But there's a lot of reason for that because, as a trans woman, if I don't go out looking my best, then it's well, you want to be a woman. Why can't you just look your best? Why didn't you put makeup on? Oh, you don't look like a woman because you don't have this or you don't have that.
From the culture who loves to put everyone down.
Pretty damn much, yeah. Good morning, Veronica. Welcome to Lady Lexi's Lair.
Hey.
We're discussing an article this morning about trans sports, and we're talking about an article about many other things. And just sit back and listen and enjoy. And we'll be checking in with comments after each individual article. And if you want to follow along, the article is right here. I will give you the link, and you're
It's
welcome
already
to follow
there.
along. I don't know if they get it initially. So you're welcome to follow along with that link if you want to. We are currently down just a little bit on it. And moving our way forward. And of course, this show is completely new. As you see, we have different camera angles from our Twitch show. And so this is kind of a completely different show. And so welcome to Lady Lexi's Lair. And of course, you know me. I am your host, hostess, Crystal, Lexi, and that is your other hostess, my beautiful wife, Crystal.
Hello.
So definitely thanks for the link. You're very welcome, Veronica. And so we're going to move on to the next part of the story, which is interesting because this story actually contains a whole bunch of different articles kind of squeezed into one. So it's very interesting. And so we've gone through kind of the first couple parts, and so now we're moving on to the next part, which happens to be Hailey Davidson, a 29-year-old woman of Scotland who was off to a solid start on the weekend when she fell short of the cut to play the final round of stage one. Her 3 over par effort overall was good enough to earn the Epsom Tour status for 2023, so next year. Davidson is a transgender woman seeking to be the first trans golfer to earn a tour card at the highest level. That led to an unusual spewing, of course, of clickbait sites and paid professional transphobes. It even sparked a war of words between 2 Scottish moms, as tennis superstar Andy Murray's mom and Judy cried, "Not fair at all," on Twitter, and Davidson's mom, the golfer's mother, replied with, "Well, you don't know my daughter Hailey, and most importantly, you know absolutely nothing about being transgender, men or women, and therefore have no rights whatsoever to give your opinion on something you know absolutely nothing about." Now, interesting fact about this golfer is that she is backed by Caitlyn Jenner. And of course, granted, she is some of the, most transgender people don't like her. We don't respect her. And I can think of words far worse than anything anybody else could say about this golfer to describe Caitlyn Jenner. But in this case, she supported the golfer's right to tee. And we all know that she is into golf because we know that back in 2016, she played on the LPGA tour as a trans woman. And of course, Caitlyn Jenner is the same woman that says trans people shouldn't play in sports. So, how do you feel about her being double standard and a hypocrite? And how do you feel about people talking about being trans and something they know nothing about?
As far as Caitlyn Jenner, I have no comment. I honestly don't think of her. She's
You don't find it
not.
hypocritical?
There are a lot of hypocritical people in the world. I'm just saying I don't find Caitlyn Jenner interesting enough to comment on. That's all.
And that makes sense. My issue with Caitlyn Jenner is that she says that trans people have an unfair advantage in sports and that we should play sports. And of course, then she is backing up Hailey, the golfer from Scotland, only because she's into golf and she loves golf. And I find that very hypocritical because, a sport is a sport is a sport, whether it's pool or golf.
But she's always been like that. I don't understand why anybody's shocked or even discussing her at this point.
Well, I get mad because she has a voice and she doesn't use it. She really should. She should use it for good for the trans community.
But she's the same person she's always been.
Agreed.
Nothing's really changed. So
No.
I don't understand why we're bringing her up just because.
Well, it just happens to be in the article, and so we'll talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So we also know that the one of the moms of one of the golfers come in and spewed her fucking hate, and we know that there's a lot of clickbait and transphobes and talking about how it's not fair. Do you feel that a woman golfer is fair or unfair as a trans woman? I don't see any physical advantage here.
Yeah, I'm not too sure there's physical advantage with knocking a tiny white ball around a golf course. I don't know. But then again, hitting balls with sticks might be something that trans women like to do.
It might be but don't you
I don't
think
know.
that hitting balls is something that cisgendered women would be pretty fucking good at? Let's face it. Come on now.
I don't think that there would be any difference. I don't see how there could possibly be. Why would a man be better calculating everything in his head than a woman as far as how to swing and hit a ball?
I don't know. From my understanding, now I don't play golf, but from my understanding, when you are golfing, it's a very standard down thumb, and you have the club in your hand, and it's a very standard swing, whether you're male or female. I would think that being a female, because of the flexibility and limberness of a female compared to a male, you'd be able to make that swing kind of a little better. So I would think, if anything, she as a transgender player would actually be at a disadvantage. Would you agree with that? That men are less limber than women?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't.
Okay, and that's fair. That's perfectly fair. Are you familiar with golf at all?
I am.
Okay, so you know that it's a regular swing, whether you're male or female, they pretty much
Mhm.
all swing the same way. It all pivots off the feet, and it's not about
Yeah.
strength, it's about the club,
I
letting the club do the work.
Yeah, I think it would be about as gendered as skateboarding.
Or
Or
snooker.
yeah, exactly. These are non-contact sports, so I don't see how any stretch of the imagination you can say that one gender is better than the other. I don't.
Well, it's funny you said that because let's say it was a contact sport. Let's say golf was tackle each other down the field to make you and prevent you from getting that ball. Would you
Well,
feel
then
that
I
there was
could
a
be more
physical
interested
advantage?
in golf.
Okay, but wouldn't we all? But would you say that there would be a physical advantage for a trans player versus a cisgendered woman? Does the trans woman have more of an advantage to tackle for the ball?
Considering I don't think that cis men have any advantage over cis women, then no, I don't think so.
Okay, and that's fair enough. And what do you all have to say in the audience? Do you feel that Haley is okay to play golf? And do you think that there is some sort of advantage or inherent advantage to a trans woman playing against a cisgendered woman in the sport of golf? But I'm going to be completely honest with you. From everything I know of golf, I think that it's a matter of letting the club do the job, not really. And it's got nothing to do with muscle because if you swing too hard, that sucker slices or goes left or goes right. And I'll tell you, I get a nasty slice when it comes to golfing because I always try to power hit the ball, and that just doesn't work. It doesn't work. You end up throwing a ball off to the left or off to the right.
I would
What
just
do you
like to
ladies say?
know who's sitting there analyzing all these women's sports. Where did all these fans come from? Because traditionally, all the sports that are watched are men's sports, and the only reason for that being men are more interested in being a spectator of sports, and they really don't care what the women are doing. So where did all these fans come from to give us all of these theatrics over it? I really would like to know because I can't think of a single time before Leah Thomas that anybody even talked about women swimming. And now we're going nuts over the snooker and the skateboarding and the golf.
What, you mean you've never been to a bar and hear people talking about the WNBA and how great women's golf is? And oh my God, you see that swing
Not a
tournament last
single
week?
time.
No, you never heard
Not a
that?
single time, but I've seen plenty of men flip through the channels through all the different sports things and skip all the women's and be like, oh, there's nothing on.
Well, that's very interesting. Well, how do you feel about, I mean, see, talking about pool and snooker and all that shit. I mean, we walk into clubs, you see men playing with women all the time. But are the women seriously at a disadvantage playing against their boyfriends?
No.
You don't think so?
No, unless they just don't give a shit. Like, I don't care. So
Well, you know, testosterone is a huge factor when it comes to playing pool, don't you know? Men are smarter than women, according to what we're reading here. And they have a longer
Sure.
reach, so apparently you have a better advantage in pool. I'm not entirely sure that this is true, but
Okay.
because as we talked about in the beginning, we measured arm length, that we are pretty much the same from shoulder to tip. And so I'm not really sure how men genetically
Okay.
have a longer arm. And or even how testosterone affects one
Yeah,
playing
they
ball.
don't, and they get their asses kicked just as often as women do. But when we're talking about just playing a game of anything, even football, I mean, that's always a mixed team. That's
It
always
is.
men and women together, without all the safety equipment. But
Of
at
course.
any rate,
Ooh, excuse me, people.
and then we go to arguing over the professional sports that never got any attention unless you were, somebody's cousin or somebody's parent, or, if you're the boyfriend, you kind of have to go, or the girlfriend, you have to go. But for all the attention all of these things are getting now, and they never did, I find it really laughable.
Okay, and that's fair because I gotta be honest, I don't really know anything about women's sports prior to anything that I've read lately, but I just know that there's a wave of sports laws
Yeah.
enabling the United States when I can think of way better things that we should be worrying about, like, welfare and single moms and homelessness and, why we have a border wall up, or maybe some foreign policy or things like that. But instead, recently earlier, I even heard Ted Cruz going off about how 12-year-olds are getting surgery. And of course, I sent him a tweet inviting him to show me proof of this 12-year-old that he knows it's getting it, quote, chopped off, according to him, because I'm pretty sure this isn't happening.
Yeah.
Green-eyed Tiger 69, welcome to the chat.
Hey.
Of course, this is live at Lady Lexi's Lair, and of course, I'm used to having my Twitch show, and of course, right now we're looking to the left a little bit to the television to see all of our comments, and so we're working to edit the set, if you will, so that we can look straight forward and see what everybody's doing and look at all your comments. But welcome to Lady Lexi's Lair. Anyway, moving on to this article, believe it or not, there's more. So it's even down to the point, and I listen to this shit. It's also going because many cisgender people especially forgot that transphobia can blow back on cis and trans women alike. And of course, we just talked about that. But do you remember, I know Kim, do you remember the Jeopardy player on Jeopardy there? What is her name? I'm trying to look it up. Give me 1 second here. We lost it somewhere. Leah Thomas, Emily Bridges, roller derby.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't in this article.
I don't think it was in this article anyway.
No.
But do you remember when that girl won on Jeopardy and she was the first transgender participant to ever really go very far? And of course it was in the news. I just woke up and seen this notification on my phone and I seen Lady Lexi's Lair, LOL. Obviously I read it wrong. I love this chat. Looking forward to many more. Well, Jamie Perks, welcome. Welcome in, and of course, this is Lady Lexi's Lair, and we're going to do things a little differently here. As you can see, we're having a discussion between us about different things that are happening in the news today, and the article that we're looking at just happens to have a few different subjects in it, which is kind of really nice because it really makes for a very good discussion on certain topics. So back last year, there was a woman on Jeopardy. I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but she won. She was one of the winningest people of all time. She was a trans woman. She won like $1 million, and now they're calling her back because they want to have her host the show on occasion as a guest host. But they feel that because she's a transgender woman, she had some sort of physical advantage over the men that she competed with. The women, excuse me, that she competed with. I'm not entirely sure what physical advantage a transgender woman had against a cisgendered woman in competition of the brain. Are they saying that testosterone makes you smarter or that estrogen makes you dumber? What do you think that's fucking all about? Yeah, they're going as low as to say that. I think that's
pretty much what they're saying, and I rest my case.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're really going low as to say that a transgender woman playing against a cisgendered woman in a knowledge competition somehow has some sort of advantage over the other fucking players. As bad as, like I said, skateboarding or snooker or even golf for that instance. And as I said earlier that we were discussing before some of you folks got here, I can tell you that there is no scientific evidence to prove that there is any physical advantage of trans people over women. It's being researched, and so far, no proof has been offered. It is really just speculation. People claim it's biology. People claim that bigger bones. People claim that it's more muscle, this, that, the other. But of course, we all know that they don't know what happens to a trans woman when they happen to transition. We all know that I lost 70-something pounds of muscle, and that I'm clearly not the same size I was 16 months ago. And they claim that, my bones are bigger. Well, let me ask you, in a swimming competition, don't you think that heavier bones would slow me down?
I don't really know. I don't know enough about it.
Well, it seems to me I'm going to weigh a whole lot more in the water, right? I mean...
No, you'd be buoyant, but I don't really know. I don't know the specifics about it, so I
don't either. I just find it interesting how they say that biology has some sort of rule about it. From my personal perspective, if I was Leah Thomas and I still had my penis, and of course we all know that I don't, but if I did, I would be willing to think that the penis would drag me down, the weight of my bones would drag me down, the height of my body would drag me down, because I've lost all of this frickin' muscle. If anything, I have an unfair advantage over the women because I have more muscle mass, less muscle, right? And when it comes to the women, we all know that women come in all shapes and sizes, and so do men for that matter. We come in all different shapes and sizes. Well, they come in all different shapes and sizes. But even when I was a man, we came in all different shapes and sizes. Shit, I was 5'6", 5'7", whatever it was. And so I think that no matter what, there's always going to be some sort of discussion out there about trans people playing sports. But when it comes right down to it, everybody has a physical disadvantage of one way or another. You are 5'4". You would have a physical disadvantage against somebody who is 6 or 6'1" in the swimming competition because they have a longer arm stretch. They have longer legs. They're going to get to the finish line first if you don't paddle twice as fast. Would you agree with that?
I would think so.
So to say that because Leah Thomas was 6'1" and she competed against other players that were maybe slightly shorter, 5'10", 5'9", 5'7", would you say that they were at an unfair advantage against her, or would you say that you'd have to disqualify everybody that's not within a few inches of everybody when you're swimming?
We settled this over the snooker question.
I agree.
Just measure the arm,
Arms and legs, you think? Or
Yeah.
maybe we can rate it by buoyancy, or we can rate it by torso size, or I can't figure out a way that
It's not a contact sport, so you really can't bullshit your way into that being an advantage or disadvantage.
no,
You really
and that's
can't.
just it. And I think, like I said, that we're all going to come in different shapes and sizes, even if it were men. We all know that Michael Phelps was the winningest Olympian of all fucking time in the swimming pool, and he had twice the lung capacity of any normal human. He had webbed feet, a 4-inch longer wingspan. We know all that bullshit. But yet, shouldn't we have disqualified him against that 5'4" person that didn't have all of that and had half the lung capacity he did and had to paddle twice as fast? I mean, shouldn't we have disqualified Phelps against that? Because by that standard, by the standard that they're setting for sports, Michael Phelps should have been disqualified against all of the other opponents he went against because he had an unfair advantage with twice the wingspan of the average human, 4 inches longer on each side, webbed feet, twice the lung capacity, did not have the prolactin, or what do they call that?
I don't know.
Whatever it is, whatever it is. But nonetheless, he had all these advantages against the average person, and yet he's celebrated and revered as being the greatest swimmer of all time, despite the fact he beat men by minutes. Sad.
Well, when you're talking about it in an Olympic setting, it really doesn't matter what anybody's measurements are. I mean, the purpose for the Olympics is to find the best athlete on the face of the planet, basically.
Agreed.
So, honestly, it really shouldn't matter if that's a male, female, whatever. It really shouldn't matter. The best athlete is the best athlete. So, in that particular instance, no, I think that Michael Phelps should have won. If Michael Phelps, it doesn't matter who's taller, shorter.
Oh, I don't
what.
disagree with you.
But in ordinary competition, then yeah, they should probably compete against people that measure up about the same way they do.
Okay, and that's fair. And the other thing is that, like, we all know that men supposedly have some sort of physical advantage, but here's the problem with that. The golfer Haley barely qualified, right? She didn't even have enough to qualify to move on in that tournament, but she did qualify for another tour card next year, which means she's essentially eliminated this year in any touring competitions, right? But she was a male at one point, so she should have had a physical advantage. She should have been able to move forward. Same thing with Leah Thomas. Leah Thomas only placed once in her competition, and of course, she should have won every competition that she ever competed in, and not come in fifth place in one and only one in whatever it was. I don't remember, but she should have won everything, all 4 events she swam. And that being said, back in 2016, there was a female weightlifter who had weightlifting competition as well, and she did not even place. So by the ruling of men have a biological advantage over women, she should have dominated that weightlifting competition. Would you agree with that? All of these people should have dominated. Where are all these trans people that are dominating these sports? I want to know, because I've never seen it.
Well, we don't want to talk about that. We just want to keep the fear mongering rolling. And if we actually have a thoughtful discussion on that,
Mhm.
it might stop, and we can't have that.
Well, we can't have that because the Republicans are fear-mongering. Everybody's saying that the trans people are taking over everything. Yet we know that's not true because trans people have been in sports for years, and there is no dominating happening. No matter what, no matter where, all these trans people are not winning. And furthermore, we know that trans men are competing as well. But why aren't we talking about trans men and we're only talking about trans women? Any idea behind that one?
Yeah. I do have an idea about that.
Mm-hmm.
The cis women, the bona fide baby makers and sandwich makers need to be protected, wrapped in bubble wrap, and sat in the corner.
Mm-hmm. But what about the
There.
trans men?
Oh, we're not worried about them.
Why not? Why aren't we worried about trans men dominating all these sports? They're men.
We're not concerned about them because the only thing that matters is the cis women.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
So you think that nobody's afraid of them because most of them have vaginas.
No, I don't think that at all. I just think that we don't need to worry about them because they're not with the cis women. So therefore it's not an issue. I don't
Okay,
think
I
that
understand.
anybody is worried about anything other than keeping cis women where they want them to be.
Okay, so trans man, okay.
Exactly.
Trans women, if they still have a penis, or
It doesn't matter.
because they used to be a man,
Uh-huh.
not okay with cis women.
Right.
So trans man okay with cis women, or men for that matter, but trans women not okay with cis women. But what about
You have to
men?
keep the herd pure.
Oh,
You can
okay.
only have the cis women with the cis women.
Okay.
That way, all of the cis men that knuckle drag
Uh-huh.
and mouth breathe,
Uh-huh.
they have a herd that they can choose from.
Is that so?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
So let me get this right. Nobody's afraid of the trans man,
Right.
but everybody's afraid of the trans woman.
Because the trans woman
Uh-huh.
is around the cis women, and we can't have that.
Do they think that we're going to get them prego?
No, they're not worried about that.
Oh,
They want to make sure
okay.
that they're seen as desirable and nothing else, is in the way of them finding mates. Rather, they're
Oh, so
high
you mean
quality
trans
or
women aren't
not.
desirable?
Well, they want someone who can not only give birth but make sandwiches.
Trans women can't make sandwiches?
Yes, trans women can make sandwiches.
Oh, but they can't give birth.
Not yet.
Well, that's interesting, actually.
The whole dynamic might change.
Well, they might be accused of being gay, I guess, right? I mean, is that the fear? Or are they afraid for the women that the trans women are somehow going to hurt the women? What do you think it is?
Maybe it's because the trans women will talk to the cis women and actually tell
Educate them?
them, yes, and tell them what's going on with the cis men.
I wonder where that's happening. I think that happens on Twitch, actually, at Live with Lady Lexi at twitch.tv/transgirl43. I'm pretty sure that happens there a lot. Most of our audience there is cisgendered women. Let's see what the audience has to say. So Kim wants to know, how do they come up with that stuff? I don't know, Kim. That's a really great question. I want to know who these professional paid transphobes are, because if you heard earlier in the article, there are professional paid transphobes. And
Wasn't Kiwi?
and Kiwi Farms has been shut down. And
Yes,
if you
but
haven't
wasn't
checked
that-
it out, the link's right there if you all want to read some of the article. It's very interesting.
Wasn't that part of the whole transphobe thing? Kiwi
It
Farms?
was. Kiwi Farms was a doxing site. And it really got super hot over the Canadian that was doxed, Keffels, whatever it was. She had been doxed, threatened, and swatted, and she ended up getting removed from her home. Just at the other end of the whole thing. And so she has since gone into hiding over all of this, and since then has forced the Kiwi Farms page down, which I think is absolutely great because it's damaging to trans people. And to be honest with you, I don't even know if I've made it to that webpage.
I don't know. And I've never been there. I had never heard of it before, I guess, a day or two ago. But
Thank you, Jamie Parks, for saying that.
I believe that I heard that they just left that domain and found another one.
Well, I heard they went to a Russian domain, but then they were shut down off the Russian domain too. And from my understanding, they are shut down. They can no longer operate.
Okay.
And I think that's a good thing because the safety of trans community is at risk with a page like that. For some people that just have nothing better to do than hammer down on fucking trans people for no goddamn reason. You know, I can't think of one reason to go out of my way to harass anybody, let alone no matter what you're doing. I can't even think of a way to go out of my way to harass the Proud Boys and Not So Proud, because we know they hide their fucking faces, kind of like the Ku Klux Klan. They did the same thing. They hid their faces like cowards. And I can't even think of any good reason to go after all of these pathetic transphobe trolls. I don't see the point in any of this. But why did they spend time coming after us? They just have nothing better to do, or is it little weenie syndrome?
Well, here again, when you threaten the status quo, you know, that has been implemented since the Americas have been invaded, you know, it's going to get a little uncomfortable. So you have all of these insecure cis men that are very uncomfortable. And the secure cis men, they're very happy because they've found partners in life and they're doing just fine. But you have all of these insecure little boys running around with their red hats on, screaming at the top of their lungs, making a lot of noise.
Do you think in the future that trans will just be normalized? Do you think that this will all go away?
I think that since it was normalized in the beginning, I think that it will again. But we have a lot of people throwing fits right now because their way, which was never acceptable, is finally fading away, and they're panicking and they're grasping at straws. I mean, it's kind of like somebody who's drowning. They're going to panic in the water and try and stay above until they finally go down. And that is exactly what's going on right now. So they're going to be violent. They're going to make a lot of noise. And eventually they're going to go down, but they're not going to go down quietly. But they will go down.
How do you feel about, well, I know that you and I have talked about some of the laws that they're passing in the states, and we know that in the state of Florida that they're pulling Medicaid coverage for trans children and trans adults alike because Governor Death Sentence is having a panic attack over trans people for some unknown fucking reason and has this Christian agenda going down his throat. Speaking of the Christian agenda, actually, let's go move off a little bit from that. How do you feel about the country with the extreme Christian nationalists coming down on us and trying to push religion down everybody's throat and make it the, quote, American way?
Well, Christianity is pretty far removed from the American way.
What do you mean?
Because when we talk about America, we're talking about continents.
Agreed.
And that is completely different from the country, which is the United States.
Okay.
So I would say that Christianity belongs to the Americas, kind of like chocolate belongs on the North Pole. It didn't start there. It doesn't belong there. Well, but as a Christian myself, my understanding of what I read in the scriptures, the Christian nationalists are quite literally, without hesitation, I would say that they are the Antichrist that the Bible speaks of.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, we did escape Europe and England and all that shit from a religious persecution, did we not? And are they not doing the same thing now with Christianity by persecuting us for not being Christians?
Part of me escaped to come here. But honestly, that was an invasion. Pretty much.
And while I agree with you, but
itself.
the original reason for leaving England was to escape religious persecution, was it not?
Yes, it was.
Okay. So that being said, they are doing the same exact thing that they left England for. They are persecuting those that don't believe in their God. How is that just, and how is that even right in the, quote, United States of America?
Okay. when they came to the Americas
Mhm.
to escape the persecution,
Mm-hmm.
that didn't stop them from beating, torturing, and doing everything that they could to make sure that everybody continually submitted to their church doctrine.
That's very Christian-like, it sounds like.
Uh,
No, never mind. I'm just being facetious, of course.
yeah. But that's what happened when they escaped the persecution over there and came here, and they brought that toxic mindset with them.
And now 200 years later, almost three, they're
It's still
doing
here.
It's still here. Yep.
It's still here.
And now
It
they
never
want to
went away.
persecute people for not being Christian, because we all know that everybody in this country is not Christian. We know that there's Christian and Muslims, and there is indigenous religions and gods, and there is hell, there's even the Viking religion. There's so many different religions, Scientology and Muslim and Buddhist, and we know that there is Jewish people and Christians and Methodists and United Methodists and Catholics and this,
there
that,
are
and
so
the
many
other.
variations.
And so
of
many
each.
variations, right? And so, do you think that they should be pushing that one Christianity type religion on everybody in this country and saying, well, we're Christian nationalists and this is the way it needs to be? And what about the rest of us? I mean, they want the rest of us to go away, all the other 800 or 5,000 so religions. I mean, like, what is up with that? I don't feel as though that's a need.
No, they want to show you all the Christian love.
Because there's no love like Christian hate, don't we know?
But they want to show you all the Christian love of the Dark Ages.
Mm-hmm.
The Inquisition is a perfect example.
It sounds to me like we're going back to the days of the Vikings raiding England, when they were trying to convert the Vikings to Christianity from the Viking religion and believing in Odin and etc., Valhalla and whatnot. Because we all know that they tried to convert them to Christians and force their religion upon them. Yes? And
Yeah.
so now it sounds like the Republicans are doing the exact same thing.
Well,
And thank you, Jamie, for agreeing with us. Thank you.
here's an interesting thing about the Vikings
Mm-hmm.
and that whole thing. The reason that the men got upset at the Vikings coming over is because the Viking men actually groomed. They actually took showers once a week,
Mm-hmm.
and worried about their appearance, how their hair was, and the body grooming.
And the people in Northumberland were not.
Right. So, yeah, all the women kind of liked the Vikings when they showed up.
So they were just really sexy hot men.
So here again, we have insecure men
Mm-hmm.
who cannot toe the line. Yeah.
I'm seeing a pattern here
You are?
of insecurity within the quote male race.
Well, no, not all of.
Well, I'm
the
not saying
males.
all of them, but the excuse me,
But
there seems to be
the
a
issue-
running
the-
trend, shall I say, of insecurity among some males.
Yeah, the insecurity and the poison that we're talking about actually comes from Europe. So that's
Well, we know it's due to
where
colonization.
all of this came from.
Well, what about all the
So-
women? What's their problem? People like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert, who are all about the Christian extreme nationalism too. What about them? What's their problem?
Well, they have specifically been bred to breed more like-minded partners for these insecure men. It's simply that. So if they ever get out and actually think about something for themselves, it's a game changer.
How can we fix it? At this point, what can we do to fix it?
Keep talking.
Well,
That's
we
it.
Keep having discussions.
That's it. Just keep talking, and hopefully, they'll pick something up or something will stick in their mind and they'll think about it.
Well, I think at this rate, I know that there is a very good possibility that there is going to be a blue wave this November, and we're going to keep the House, which would be fantastic. Because I think at this point, even a lot of Republicans, and I know you and I have talked about this too, that a lot of Republicans are saying that they're going to vote blue because of their Christian nationalist extremist, pretty much comparing them to Nazi at this point. because that's what people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and Ted Cruz and Lauren Boebert and Donald Trump, things like that. These people are fucking Nazis. They're acting just like Nazis because they're trying to take a marginalized group, i.e., the LGBTQI and trans community, and they're trying to essentially create and commit genocide by taking away care and making it more difficult. And of course, we know next they're going after biracial marriage and contraceptive, this, that, the other. And at this point, if you're trying to take away the rights of Americans and the right of anybody, it sounds to me like that is the Nazi. Because again, I know we've talked about this on my other show, is that that the largest Christian nationalist was in fact Hitler. And we know he took down 6 million Jews because of his anti-rhetoric and his fear-mongering, telling everybody that Jews were going to make his children trans or gay. We know that happened. And so now it seems to me that the United States is doing the same fucking thing, telling people that we will make their children trans or gay simply by talking about it. Or God forbid, we touch them. You have the trans. Don't you know?
Oh, do we have more of the article?
I do believe we have a little bit more of that.
Okay.
And I know we strayed off.
We're running out of time.
We are running out of time, and I know that we strayed off a little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. And so basically, the article goes on to talk about Leah Thomas. So this year, we know as a reporter, they slogged through the Leah Thomas struggle. You know that. The UCI versus Emily Bridges legislators seeking to rise to power by trampling on trans youth. And we know that there, in the last 3 years, there's been an overwhelming amount of bills passed against the trans community and so forth, and so-called feminists by joining those who have stood against women's rights at every turn. But unlike Thomas and Bridges, Hunter, the snooker and billiards player, was backed up by the top of their game's governing body, which means that the people playing the snooker tournament and the golf, well, the snooker tournament more than anything, is that she was backed by the International League for Pool and Snooker or whatever, and I think that's fantastic. And they pretty much did the same thing that Penn State did and stood behind Leah Thomas. And I think that if the LPGA is going to have a trans player, I think that they need to stick behind her as well. And at this point, I think that the schools individually need to start standing behind these trans players and say, you know what, listen, we appreciate your input, but I think we're going to do it our way. And I think that that's the way it needs to start going at this point, because I know that some schools and colleges have other anti-discrimination policies, and they're allowing trans children to play, or trans people, trans adults, whatever it may be, in these college sports, because they do have their, quote, own non-discrimination laws. And of course, we're going to talk about that tomorrow, because I know that there's a few schools out there in Tennessee.
We're not going to be here
Alabama.
tomorrow.
You're right, Wednesday. There's some schools out there in Tennessee, or some governors in Tennessee, that want to start telling people how they could run their schools and what they should say in their web pages and whatnot. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit on Wednesday. How do you all feel about this? Do you all have, and that pretty much sums up the article for the most part. The U.S. Open winner was bolstered by a large majority of snooker fans across social media, who swung up with a vigor that would rival the roller derby participants and fans stand up for their game. The episode at the snooker table for me is as farcical as those who turned anti-trans and surly because a trans woman was a juggernaut in a game show. And of course, we talked about that a little bit as well. But it's also calling, I don't remember if you remember when they were both calling the Williams brothers, Serena Williams and her sister, they were calling them brothers because, of course, they were winning and they were larger than any other woman who was playing tennis. But of course, we know that they weren't trans, but yet Serena Williams was on top. She was number one for many years alike. And I think that, when it comes to that, that just goes to show you that women come in all shapes and sizes. And of course, they accused her of being trans. And we all know that that's not true, because she wasn't, quote, feminine enough, like we talked about earlier in the article, that people and this whole problem is starting to widespread and pour over into bathrooms and other locker rooms and things alike, because people don't appear, quote, feminine enough. And I think that at this point it's gone too far. So in closing, I'm going to have to say this. I think that we as a society have to just start admitting that, and understanding that the world is changing, and that trans people are here to stay, and that we're not going anywhere. And I also think that we need to start acknowledging and recognizing that there is no biological or physical advantage for trans people, and that trans people need to be treated equally and not segregated, as this causes many, many problems down the road, as we've seen back in the 1950s when segregation of black people was a thing. And now, of course, they're doing the exact same thing to the trans community by pretty much saying, you're not good enough. And we know that that's going to alienate a lot of children to make them feel bad. And of course, that's going to cause the unaliving idolizations. And of course, we know that the trans community has the largest at 41% of people who have thought about, committed, or have considered unaliving themselves. And we know that most of that's due to societal pressure or lack of medicine, this, that, the other. And of course, social pressure in the government right now plays a big role, because the government, with all of these things, have seen an uptick in trans children trying to unalive themselves. And it's really unfortunate at this point that the government's creating genocide in this case, pretty much trying to eradicate the trans community. So in closing, I think that we need to start accepting people who they are and just kind of get used to the fact that we're here to stay. And I really don't think we're going anywhere. And I think the government needs to stop practicing medicine without a license. How do you feel about that?
I agree.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our time for today. So we really appreciate you showing up for our very first episode of Lady Lexi's Lair. And this is kind of going to be the format of the show where we just kind of talk about different things in the news and take your input. Right now, we don't have the capability to really take your input during the show. And of course, as you see, we only have a few people here, and that's great. We appreciate the people that we do have. If you like the show, please PayPal. You can get it there at Transgirl43. You can send PayPal there, and we would really appreciate that if you want to support the show. And of course, we'll be back on Wednesday with more topics to talk about. In the meantime, have a great night. Thank you for joining us, and have a great, wonderful day. And thanks for joining us for our morning coffee. Have a great day.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.